Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this absolutely massive story of how we went from floating atoms in the primordial world to the complex modern society we live in today. We're going to cover the whole shebang, from the emergence of agriculture in Mesopotamia and the building of the Egyptian pyramids, all the way through the mighty Roman Empire, the global connections of the Silk Road, and straight into the technological revolutions of our modern era. It's a wild ride, so let's explore it together. We'll navigate this incredible journey through 5 distinct eras. First, the dawn of civilization. Second, order, philosophy, and empire. Third, connecting the world. Fourth, faith, fracture, and survival. And finally, we'll look at the march to modernity. To really wrap our heads around the scale of this story, just look at this timeline. From floating atoms 3 billion years ago to Homo erectus leaving Africa 1.9 million years ago to Neanderthals adapting to the cold 400,000 years ago, it took an immense amount of time just to reach 4000 BCE. That is the absolutely critical moment when humans finally stopped foraging and put down permanent roots in Mesopotamia.
Section 1. The Dawn of Civilization. Settling down.
Now, you might be wondering, what did that actually cost us? Well, our story truly accelerates in the fertile lands of Uruk, where humanity made a world-changing but honestly incredibly taxing physical trade-off just to survive. We literally traded our super athlete hunter-gatherer stature for a reliable food source. By spending our days hunched over, crushing grains with heavy stone handmills, early landlocked farmers actually shrank. We went from an average of 5'9" all the way down to 5'3". We traded mobility for security. And, well, with settlement came society, and, of course, the need for rules. Take King Hammurabi in 1772 BCE. He created this incredibly strict, deeply unequal legal system. There was absolutely no illusion of equality here. Under his code, the value of a noble's bone was officially worth more than a commoner's, which in turn was worth more than a slave's. It was a society cemented in rigid, unbending castes.
Section 2. Order, Philosophy, and Empire. Structuring the Ancient World.
As populations absolutely exploded, from the laborers building Egypt's massive pyramids to the farmers settling in China's river valleys, early leaders needed brand new ways to structure these massive empires. And they had to justify their absolute power. The Zhou dynasty in China came up with something brilliant: the Mandate of Heaven. They essentially dictated that natural disasters, like massive floods or famines, were literal signs from above that a ruler had lost their divine blessing. It was kind of a perfect, self-correcting philosophical system, right?
Meanwhile, over in ancient Greece, Athens was experimenting with this incredibly chaotic version of democracy, where 500 citizens were selected entirely at random via a mechanical machine to rule. Now, the philosopher Plato, he absolutely hated this. He argued that just like a true navigator has to study the seasons to steer a ship, we need highly educated people to steer the state. To him, only a trained philosopher king should be in charge, definitely not just any random citizen who won a lottery.
But as history shows us, ambitious men eventually bypass the philosophy and just seize power anyway. Take Julius Caesar. In 49 BCE, he literally crossed the Rubicon River with his army, completely defying the Roman Senate and sparking a civil war. He made himself dictator for life, totally restructured society by building new roads and giving us the Julian calendar we still use today. But he ultimately paid for that ambition when he was famously assassinated by his own senators. Talk about a dramatic rise and fall.
Section 3. Connecting the World, the Great Exchange.
With massive empires like Augustus's Rome and Han Dynasty China firmly established, humanity started reaching out. We're talking about the Silk Road, established around 138 BCE. This wasn't just a dirt path. It was literally the world's first global supply chain. It allowed Chinese merchants to sell highly profitable silk all the way to the Mediterranean. But what's really fascinating is that empires like the Parthians cleverly positioned themselves as strict middlemen. They intentionally kept Rome and China from direct contact just to ensure all those massive profits flowed right into their own pockets. But ideas traveled even faster than silk. Along these same routes, we saw the earth-shattering spread of entirely new faiths. You have Siddhartha Gautama finding enlightenment under a fig tree around 500 BCE, sparking Buddhism. You have Jesus, born during a Roman census and executed by Pontius Pilate, starting a Christian faith that somehow survived brutal Roman persecution. And then Islam, with Muhammad receiving revelations in 610 AD, which successfully united the entire Arabian Peninsula in just a matter of decades.
Section 4. Faith, Fracture, and Survival. The Tumultuous Middle Ages. But that ancient order just couldn't hold. The fall of Western Rome in 476 AD plunged Europe into a really dark era, defined by violent fracture and holy wars, most notably the Crusades. Starting in 1095 AD, European popes started sending these massive armies to conquer Jerusalem, and despite some early success, they repeatedly attempted and ultimately failed to permanently hold the city against brilliant Muslim commanders like Saladin. It really defined an era of intense, brutal ideological warfare. And beyond the wars, you have to understand the staggering scale of mortality during this time. The bubonic plague wiped out somewhere between 75 million and 200 million people. It's almost hard to wrap your head around. It was a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. But, historically speaking, it completely upended the feudal labor market. With so few workers left alive, surviving peasants suddenly had real leverage. They could actually demand better rights and keep way more of what they farmed. Now, in stark contrast to that immense loss of life, consider this incredible statistic: 8%. Genghis Khan's brutal, sweeping unification of the Mongol Empire left such a massive genetic footprint that 8% of men in South Asia today are his direct descendants. It's a really striking reminder of how single historical figures can leave literal physical traces in our DNA. Section 5. The March to Modernity, Awakenings and Revolutions. Out of the ashes and darkness of the Middle Ages, new ideas sparked a total global reset. Think about it. In 1215, the Magna Carta set the precedent that even kings aren't above the law. In 1453, the Ottomans breached Constantinople, which ended the ancient Roman legacy forever. And then, soon after, Europeans crossed the Atlantic, leading to the brutal, technologically driven conquest of incredible, vast civilizations in the New World. While the map was being redrawn, the Renaissance was blooming in Europe. But hey, it wasn't just about beautiful art by Da Vinci and Michelangelo. It also brought us Niccolo Machiavelli and his stark realization: it is much safer to be feared than loved. He completely stripped away the illusion of Plato's philosopher king and just stated plainly that political power throughout all of history has ultimately relied on fear. It's a chilling but pretty accurate observation of human nature. Let's see how all of this snowballs into the modern era. Martin Luther's religious rebellion with his 95 Theses in 1517 sparked Protestantism, which led to devastating European conflicts like the 30 Years' War. But when that finally ended in 1648 with the Peace of Westphalia, it established the concept of sovereign nations. And it's those very nations that eventually birthed the modern revolutions we see erupting by 1776. Which brings us to an absolutely incredible turning point. By 1776, right alongside Adam Smith publishing his capitalist theories and Mozart composing his symphonies, humanity boldly declared a brand new philosophy. We said that power shouldn't belong to a philosopher king, and it shouldn't belong to a fearful dictator. Power and fundamental human rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness belong equally to everyone. So, as we wrap up this explainer on our incredible human journey, all the way from shrinking farmers in Mesopotamia to the bold signing of the Declaration of Independence, we really have to wonder. We've survived plagues, we've built wonders, and we've completely rewritten the rules of society time and time again. So after thousands of years of empires rising and falling, what exactly will our next chapter look like? Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep learning.